Hello once again to our dear viewers, to our Discovery series of podcasts, Own What's Yours, where we try and make estate planning understandable, interesting, and even a little bit fun. With me today, I'm very happy to have our Deputy CEO of Discovery Life, Gareth Friedlander. Welcome, Gareth.
Thank you, Harry. Good to
Nice
be
to
with
see
you.
you taking the show seriously by wearing a jacket and black socks,
It's a,
unlike
v-
me.
it's a very serious topic, this, Harry.
Good. Gareth, I mean, on a serious level, we've got some interesting stats this morning from our Wills and Trust team where they were telling us that 55% of our clients, so these are clients that have started the process and that are engaged, don't complete the will process. They start it, but never get to the end stage. And of course, we know the stats from the master where around 70% of people in South Africa die without a will or without a valid will. What's the issue, Gareth? Why are people so reluctant, have such difficulty in completing a simple process of signing and doing a will?
It's a great question, and I think one that kind of this industry has been grappling with for decades without necessarily getting it right. We've heard this concept of 70% of South Africans don't have a will for years and years, and it's really hard to move the needle on that. It's such a fundamental pillar of financial planning. What is going to happen to my assets when I die? And who do they go to? How will it be rolled up? Have I done this simple act of drafting a will and thinking about my estate planning? It's quite simple to do. It's probably not a nice thing to think about. And it probably the perception is that, oh, I don't even know where to start. This might be expensive. I'll do it tomorrow. Um, so for whatever behavioral reasons, people just don't do it. They don't get around to it. They put it off. They don't know how to do it. They don't know where to start, or they think it's maybe not for them. So we're looking at ways to firstly make it simple to get to the end of the process. It shouldn't be a long process. But secondly, to reward them for doing that. So get the signed will back, put it in storage with us, make that free, and reward clients through the Vitality Money Points, 10,000 Vitality Money Points for doing that process. So I think those types of incentives using the behavioral models that we've learned over the past 3 decades, I'm excited. I think they'll change the space.
Great, thanks, Gareth. I mean, that's important, but I've got to tell you about a case that happened to a colleague of mine who's an attorney in practice last week. Friday night, he's sitting watching the soccer, the World Cup, having a nice, relaxed Friday evening. He gets a call from one of his big clients. Their mother is in hospital in ICU. The end is near, and she wants to change her will. Gets in his car, rushes off to the hospital. She wants to take one of the kids out the will. And he brought her the new will, and she actually couldn't sign it at the end. She couldn't take that kid out the will. And I think that talks to what we're discussing, that people battle with these final decisions because it's emotional, it's traumatic, it's difficult, it's thinking about who gets what. And we've got to work with that. I mean, we've got to get people over the line, as you say, and storage is so important. We spoke about this earlier, but when a client sends the will back to us to store, not only do we put it in a nice, safe, accessible place, but we check the will. We check that it's signed correctly, that it's signed in the correct place. We have probably 5% of our clients, and we've checked the stats, that we send the will back to because they haven't signed it correctly. They initialed instead of signing in full. They signed in the middle and not at the end of the will. So it's so important that last stage, getting it back to us. And then when we store it, of course, when they die, everyone knows where the will is. There's no fighting over the will. One of our panelists was telling me that he had a case recently where the will was stored on the guy's bookshelf, which is, I suppose, where you store a will. But then when they moved the books, someone ripped off the front page of the will. So now he's dealing with a will which is missing its front page, and that might now well be invalid. So as you say, I mean, storage, we've now made it free and so easy to do.
Yeah, and just the timing of some of these discussions. The anecdote you've told now. You want to be having these conversations when you're of rational mind, when you're not emotional, when you're sitting with a professional, when you've got time to get all of your documents and thoughts together. And that's what, we want to try and incentivize is that people don't wait till the last minute and then, rush to get some type of will or will amendment in place and make irrational decisions or last minute changes or, issues that might arise
Right.
because
Or
of
be
that.
challenged in court or usually
Exactly.
court cases.
So, I think it's about really incentivizing those discussions and those conversations to be happening earlier in the right time, in the right place, and where people are kind of thinking appropriately and working with real qualified professionals, which we have a wonderful team of fiduciary specialists that will sit with our clients and work through, all of their estate planning needs.
I mean, Gareth, carrying on from that, one of the big issues we get with clients is who should be my executor? I don't trust my accountant. I had a case recently, another anecdote, where some lady came to me at one of our client presentations, and her dad's will was stored with his accountant. The accountant's retired and disappeared. They can't find the will. Her dad has now got dementia. He can't do a new will. So they've got no way of winding up this estate when he dies. How do we at Discovery help clients like this, with the executorship, with the trusteeship, where it's difficult to find a professional and to trust them?
Yeah, no, 100%. And having professionals in this space is so important. So we've got expert executors and trustees that we will put in place who this is their sole job is to look after all of our clients' estates and help them with the estate wind up process. And importantly, the Discovery Estate Preserver product is kind of inherently linked to this process, which indemnifies all of those fees. Unfortunately, the process of winding up an estate in its own right can be complex and long and, not and can often be more complex than it needs to be if you haven't, got the right people in your corner. But it can also be expensive. And there's a lot of hidden costs along the way that people perhaps didn't think about. So it's about shining a light on those firstly and showing clients what those costs can be as part of rolling up the estate. But then if you plan in advance and take insurance out for those, we can indemnify those so that clients aren't, needing to worry about how are executive fees and trustee fees going to eat into the end result that's going to pass down to my heirs. And, very cheap, simple product, but unbelievably powerful. In peace of mind, those fees, those hidden costs are completely indemnified from a cost perspective and we'll get them taken care of through the best professionals in the industry.
I think it's so important, Gareth, what you just raised, the cost issue. I mean, I have plenty of clients who say to me, you know what, I don't want to pay anything to wind up my estate. I'll make my spouse the executor and they'll wind it up for free. And then I say to them, no, you're going to have died. Your spouse is going to be traumatized. I always make the joke, my spouse wouldn't be traumatized. She'll be carrying on quite happily onto the next guy as soon as I kick the bucket. But most spouses will be traumatized. Now, you expect them in their moment of great trauma to know who the right person is to bring in, to negotiate the right fees, to do all of that. Why not do it for them? And of course, have the knowledge that it's covered by a product.
100%, Harry. And I mean, on that note, you know, um, thinking in advance about if you've got minors, you don't know when you're going to pass away. And, you deal with this all the time in terms of setting up the right trusts and making sure that those decisions are thought about in advance, that it's not your spouse having to deal with these types of complexities at a time when they're mourning and traumatized.
And there might not even be a spouse. I mean, you give me the in with the trust. If there are minors who are going to benefit, please create a testamentary trust. And of course, for that, you need a will. You can't create a testamentary trust without a will. So you need a will, you need a couple of pages of bump in that will, giving the powers of the trustees, what they can do, what they can't do. But of course, most important, which you alluded to, Gareth, who's going to pay the trustee? A lot of our clients are setting up, and again, we're not being dismissive or flippant about it. Some of our clients have got smaller estates, but they still want to create a trust for their children or minor children. If you've got R500,000 in a trust, your average trustee won't take that appointment on because there's not enough money in the trust to pay their fees. But with our product, that fee is indemnified. So they'll get a professional trustee who gets their full fee paid, so they're getting a proper service. And our clients know that no matter what the amount in the trust, they will have a proper trust set up, look after their minor kids. And of course, it's the same for a policy. If you've got a policy, please create that trust to be a beneficiary rather than the minor.
No, absolutely.
Gareth, carrying on now with a bit of offshore issues. Clients have got offshore assets. They don't always realize it, but they might have a property in London. I mean, they might have a share portfolio in Switzerland. They might have shares now in the NASDAQ. All these things trigger issues. So what are some of the issues we're finding with offshore assets and how we're trying to help clients with that?
Yeah, Harry, I mean, it's, we starting to see this more and more. And I think the world is increasingly global. And, when people pass away, they're often going to have heirs that are sitting offshore. So one of the ways we've dealt with this from a financial planning perspective is through our Discovery Life International offering, and specifically the Dollar Life Plan, which sits, through our Guernsey branch, using clients, single discretionary allowances. And so it's proper externalized premiums. You can pay each month in rands, but then we take it offshore. And then if something were to happen to the life assured, death, disability, severe illness, whatever it might be, we pay out that claim to the beneficiaries, in an offshore bank account of their choosing. And it's a really powerful way to, transfer assets and do the financial planning necessary where clients have more complex needs from an offshore perspective.
Yeah, great. And Gareth, just to add to that, I mean, clients might have a big enough estate offshore to trigger death taxes offshore. So let's say they got that flat in London where they go watch Wimbledon, which is starting in a couple of weeks. Now, when they die, that could trigger a citus tax at up to 40%. And how's that going to be paid? Are they going to have to sell the flat in London to pay the citus tax? And of course, through our dollar product, it creates the offshore liquidity to fund the citus tax. Even better, if they got minor kids who might be potentially benefiting from that dollar, we've got a facility through a link to a Mauritian trust company where they can create a Mauritian trust to be the beneficiary of those proceeds, to look after the assets for the kids. So doing offshore estate planning, and it's a very affordable cost. It's not the $10,000 a year like a lot of trust companies are charging. We got a much cheaper facility, just as well run, just as well managed, but it's cheaper because it's a simpler facility.
100%. It's an incredibly powerful way of thinking about offshore planning from an estate perspective. You talked about kids. It's just triggered the thought. The education protection product, which is
Exactly.
often
We're going to come to that
linked,
now.
in a way to what we were talking about earlier with testamentary trusts and how to, you know, deal with minors post a death. Um, One of the best ways is through our education protection product, our global education protector, that for a small premium each month, if one of the parents pass away, will indemnify that child's full education journey. And the beauty there
Overseas as well,
is
not just locally.
we can do it overseas as well if you've taken it through the dollar plan, and locally we'll pay it directly to the institution, which is quite nice because I think you want to be able to sleep at night knowing that that child's education is covered. So it's taken out of the client's hands in terms of, where is that money going to go to? Will it eventually reach the school for my child?
Exactly. Yeah.
We pay it directly through our claims team to that institution. So that's very helpful from a planning perspective.
I think it's a great idea because it makes it simpler. Say the client hasn't got a trust or say their estate is wound up. Who's going to pay that educational facility if the kid's a minor or if the kid's not responsible? So we'll pay the institution direct and it'll all be looked after. I mean, Gareth, taking this all home now, why would clients come to Discovery Wills and Trusts? I mean, what are we planning? What are some of the thought processes around, how we approach estates, how we approach wills, how we approach the whole industry now that we've up and running and we're almost a year into the business?
Yeah, Harry, I think in so many ways, this is foundational to financial planning. You think about Discovery Now, we're this fully fledged financial services company with banking and investments and obviously life insurance, and medical aid came first, and then kind of sitting on our shared value chassis of Vitality and Vitality Drive and Vitality Money. And then this kind of foundational piece of wills and trusts, which brings it all together, is incredibly exciting for me. I think the power of what we've built enables us to do this unbelievably efficiently, but also incredibly professionally. We've built a team now of specialists that will provide fantastic advice. We've built products that wrap around it to indemnify costs. And then we've built it onto our shared value chassis, which rewards clients and nudges them to do the right behaviors, rewards them through Vitality Money points up front, through paybacks over time for the right types of behaviors. I think, and then obviously we've started to have a couple of clients who pass away, and, the estate roll up process is top notch. And we've got incredibly qualified professionals, executors, and trustees who will assist clients when they get to that part of the process. So it really is wrapped up in a simple, highly efficient um, process and product using our kind of core DNA of shared value and behavior change. And I'm really excited about where this business is going to go, and hopefully we will be, a big part of how we can get more and more South Africans to be doing what they know they should be, which is thinking about their estate planning and, drafting that will.
I mean, Gareth, I couldn't agree with you more. We have so many clients who, they got investments, they got life policies, and they don't have a will. You can't have a financial plan without a will. It's, as you say, the foundation. We're talking about the World Cup. You can't have a soccer team without a defense. That's your foundation. You can't have a plan without a will. And it's funny, I was dealing with a director the other day of a listed company, a highly regarded director. He's got a will that's 10 years old. He's got 4 kids. Only the first 2 kids are in the will. Now, again, he's got a great financial plan, but he hasn't got anything because he's left his 2 kids out of the will. And it's only through doing a will you start to think of these things. Now he's thinking about investments for those 2 kids, which he forgot about. He's thinking about changing his beneficiaries on his life policy so the other 2 kids can benefit. So that will opens up everything in your financial plan. It opens up how your family are going to live if you pass, how they're going to be looked after, how you've structured. And please, I mean, this is to both spouses. You need to think about the other spouse as well. And I'll just finish off with a final scenario we had recently. Husband died. He left a young wife and a 5-year-old kid. He owned the house. Didn't have a will. Now that, of course, house goes interstate, which means the young wife and the 5-year-old kid share equally. They each own 50% of the house. Now you can never sell that house because to have a 5-year-old kid sell, you need a judge of the high court to sign it off, and they will never get to that process. Now, again, that means both spouses are now stuck with the mess, not just the dead spouse. And people, it's so important. You don't have anything without a will. I can't stress it enough. Any final words, Gareth, to our viewers to close off?
No, Harry, I think you've wrapped it all up. I think you know, we are really excited from our perspective to be moving in earnest into this space. Uh, Continue to watch for more. We'll bring more and more innovation into this unbelievably fundamental part of our business, and go get your discovery will as soon as possible.
Thanks, Gareth. To our viewers, to close off, what Gareth said is exactly right. Watch the space. We're full of ideas. We're full of innovation. Wills Month is coming up in September. We're going to be all over that. So please, to our viewers, speak to your financial advisor. Come to our website, www.discovery.co.za. Please, this is a call to action. Start the will process, finish it, get your wills done, and get them stored. Thank you.